It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, folks, he was born in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Played a little baseball, I guess. Attended Lafayette College. And then it's just history then. He goes on to the major leagues as a manager. And he becomes the champion, or the World Series World Series manager of the Chicago Cubs, Joe Maddon, a native of our area. So happy to have him on the Sam Lesante Show. See, Joe, that's what happens when you listen to me.
You're right.
You see,
I'm
last year...
I'm still taking the fish oil, by the way. I took it this morning.
Good.
I did.
See?
The same
That's
one
why
you
you
gave me several years ago.
That's why you're doing so
That's
great.
why my niece feels so good.
Call him on the phone, Bob. Say, look, you play this play, you do this, and then he listened, and there he is. Well, first of all, without question, congratulations.
Thank you, man. It's been it was rather exciting. I know everybody was watching. We're lamenting the fact that the game was on until 12:30 in the morning. Although I don't think many people were concerned about that. It's a significant moment in baseball history, significant moment in Chicago Cub history, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Well, we're going to get to that great moment that my wife and I were up, just jumping up and down, and thank God it rained. I thought, because it was perfect.
It was a perfect storm, literally.
Yeah. Joe, you came when you were a native of Hazleton, of course, and you remind me of when I was working with Jack Palance. And no matter where we went with Jack, and for 30-some years I worked with Jack, no matter when they ever asked him where he was from, he specific would say, I'm from Latimer Mines, Hazleton, Pennsylvania, lives in Drums. And when they would say from the Poconos, he would get upset. No, I said I'm from the Hazleton area, I'm mine. And I think you've been able to do that all the time, and it's the fact that you've not forgotten where you're from, which is so important. Now let's go back a little bit in history. When you came in this town a while back, you saw some things that were a little concerning to you. We have a lot of new viewers in Lackawanna County. I want them to know what happened when Joe Maddon came here, because when we talk about Hazleton 1, which is fantastic, okay, just going through the roof, and Bob will address that. What did you see, Joe?
I thought the town was a little bit dark, and I thought everybody was, afraid of one another. I saw a tremendous disconnect, totally unlike what it was like when we had grown up here. It was 2010. I think it was 2010. I came back, and my wife Jay and I were just driving down Broad Street, and I was really upset because again, everything was dark. The sidewalks were bad. Nobody was out. Everybody was afraid of each other, and everybody's concerned about all the Hispanics coming into town, which, again, I'll say once again, I'm all for. These are really wonderful people. They're totally like we were like back in the day as Catholic, Italian Catholic immigrants, or Polish Catholic immigrants. These people are exactly the same people. So I got here, and I was really upset. And I called Bob and Elaine, Jay and I did, when I got back to California, wanted to do something about it, because I really saw this tremendous disconnect, and I really thought our city was on the verge of dying. I mean that sincerely, I did. So I thought, you have to understand that the folks that were here, the Hispanic people that were here, were actually going to save the city. They're a big part of saving the city, the community, and putting us back on the map, having our area thrive once again. All of that was, in my mind, on that day in 2010 when I went down to New York as, excuse my voice, down to the daycare center. So we went back home, we created this plan. One of the biggest things I had heard was what kids do when they got home from school was a big issue, because a lot of the folks were working, the kids come home to empty houses, trouble ensued. So we needed to do something to get these kids off the street post-school. And so we thought community center is perfect, get them off the streets, get them into school. And really the easy part of this to me is that if you get the kids there, the parents will eventually follow. So all those things are part of the equation.
So you started, and what happened was, you always made a little resistance, but when you look at what has happened from 2010 up to now, as the success of HIP, and the Hazleton 1 Community Center has just been phenomenal, and Bob will address to the national attention. But Joe, I'm a firm believer when you grow up, you have to have substance. You need you come from families that, all our parents worked. My grandfather, when he came here from Italy, he was thrown out of a bank, you've heard this story, because he didn't speak Italian. Go back to where you came from, okay, was what he was told in the bank here. And that broke his heart. And I remember my grandfather, a grown man, crying when he came off the bus, because someone said, go back to your, and he was a citizen. So I think with that in mind, we have a compassion for people, and look what you've accomplished because of the substance that you bring to the table. And I think that's admirable. It's just something that has been a great thing.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, just to briefly address the folks that still don't believe, what we're experiencing right now in our hometown is exactly what it looked like 60 to 100 years ago, sure. Something in that time frame, because at that time, just like you're suggesting or talking about, even my dad, I'm certain, at some point was ridiculed for however he dressed or the music he listened to, the group that he hung out with. And I know my mom's side too, the Polish side, same thing. The folks today, I really wish you would understand that you have this unique opportunity to relive history in the present tense by actually seeing exactly what it looked like in days gone by. The Hispanic people are wonderful people, I identify with them very closely. I'm very empathetic with this particular group because I think they're exactly, not kind of like, they're exactly like we were when we first arrived in the city. So not only that, understand that these are really bright people, they're very creative people, they're very innovative, and they're going to add a lot of substance, and like I said, they're going to really help rebuild our economy within the Hazleton community. And if you look on the national scale right now, what's going on in our country in this past election, we have this chance to actually be out in front. I mean, this is the kind of program we're trying to do here right now that we've always thought about becoming a national model that other communities throughout the country could emulate. So when we started it out, met with a lot of resistance. I heard a lot of the kind of a hate kind of message that actually to me was kind of funny. I mean, I laugh at stuff like that, quite frankly, because we often mock what we don't understand. If you don't understand something, if you have built-in prejudice, you're going to push a lot of times in the wrong direction. So all this stuff, I'm giving you the Cliff Notes briefly here, but that's where I come from. I don't mind rubbing against the grain a bit. I like shifts. I like putting 4 infielders on one side of the field, like 4 outfielders sometimes. I like to try to safety squeeze in the 9th inning in a World Series game with 2 strikes on my second baseman. All that stuff permits you to really back a situation like this. Last point, if you want a good major league coach, the most attractive quality in a major league coach to me is that he's fearless. So if you want to be a leader in this town, this community, or what we're trying to get done here, really understand the concept of being fearless and having courage, because that's how you get things done. And
so now Bob Curry, who is here also, folks, Bob, you're the president, right, of the HIP. So for those people, when Joe gave you the challenge, okay, and looked at the town, and you started developing HIP. Now, first of all, what is HIP, okay, and specifically, what are you doing right now?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say is, and this just goes back to what you were talking about with your grandfather, or Joe bringing up his father at some point running into some problems in our community, in our city, because of their ethnicity, and we can't run away from that. In some ways, what we have is like the old comic book character, Pogo, which was in the Sunday comics.
Yes.
And he concludes at one point that we have met the enemy and he is us. And that has never lost my head. And so what I really think is that people need to understand that we can be our own worst enemies, but we can also, if we just overlook a situation and see a little bit further down the road, watch where the puck is going, so to speak, it'll reinforce exactly what Joe is talking about, which is our best days are ahead of us. We have something magnificent that we can work with, a whole brand new culture of people. Most of these people extraordinarily similar to our grandparents, very religious, very hardworking, very family oriented. And we see it in the center because we deal with these people every single day. We are extraordinarily proud of what's happening in the center and what we've been able to do in the last 3 years. And I credit Joe and his wife Jay so much for the kind of progress that we've been able to make. But we've got an after-school program. Joe spoke to the idea that we wanted to give kids an opportunity. And these are kids that may not have the economic wherewithal to create those opportunities within their families. So if we level the playing field, or we try to level the playing field, every kid there we hold to the highest expectations. We tell them, you represent us. You represent your city. And because of that, We expect you to conduct yourself in the same way outside of these four walls as you do inside these four walls. We have kids now at the STEM school. We have kids at MMI on scholarships. And one of the misnomers I want to get out of here right away, this is not a center for Hispanics. Our middle name is Integration. This is a center for all the people in Hazleton, and trust me, well, you know, because you've been there several times. You know that we don't deal exclusively with Hispanic families. We have families from literally all over the world. We have Middle Eastern families, we have Caucasian families, and everything within the four walls of that building works marvelously. I believe the atmosphere inside the building is starting to be reflected outside the building.
Yes, I was just going to mention that.
There's far less criticism at this point of the things we're doing, and this is it. Joe says this over and over and over. If you doubt what we're doing, walk into the building. See the kids that we're dealing with. See what it is we're actually doing. You don't have to guess. It's not, you don't have to conjure up images. Walk in the building. It's a marvel.
They'll conjure verbs much better than you can, I promise you.
You know, the interesting thing is if we would have had things like this many years ago, you know, when my grandparents came here, but when I see these young children, okay, young kids, you know, and how they work together, they don't look at each other as, oh, you're black, you're white, you're Spanish, you're Italian. It's like they all work together. And you know what? It's becoming contagious because they bring it home.
They do.
Our community's got to get over that stuff, man. That is the world. That's what the world looks like. I'm in it all the time, and I love it. I mean, if you look at my locker room, Cubano, Dominicano, Puerto Ricano, Venezuelans, throughout my locker room, blacks, whites, whatever. I mean, the people here, we really have to take a step forward. If you want to put Hazleton back on the map and make it as good as it possibly can be, we have to understand that the diversity component is one of the most attractive things you could possibly do in a community. And Bob used the word expectations. If you remember, if you watched the Cubs this year, I really wanted us to thrive on two words, and that was pressure and expectations. Expectations should be considered a good, positive word. Sometimes people run away from that because, of course, you're concerned about not living up to this particular moment, or I'm unable to pull off this grandiose task. Expectations are good. I'd like to see the people of Hazleton, us, and listen, I know I'm not here enough, I understand that, but really apply a lot of expectations to us in regards to what we can get done here as a community, whether it's in the center, whether it's in the community itself, just the look of it, the artistic component of our hometown, the economic component. Put a lot of expectations on ourselves and go out there and attempt to do that. That's how you get better, man. If you all constantly think that you can't arrive at a higher level, you'll never will. You got to aim high in order to hit the mark.
Folks, I'm talking to Joe Maddon, who is the manager of the World Series champion Chicago Cubs, and he's the honorary chair of the Hazleton 1 Community Center, which is just absolutely fantastic, folks. For those of you who live in the greater Hazleton area, you know what I'm talking about. For all of the new viewers in Lackawanna County, if we could take this program and multiply it, you know, and all over the country, it would be fantastic. And also Bob Curry, who is the president. We'll be back right after this. Remember, 24/7, you can watch all of our local programs on, excuse me, ssptv.com. And for those of you in the Hazleton area, Service Electric Cablevision, don't forget we're on high definition now, 513, Comcast 190 in Greater Pottsville, Channel 92, Wilkes-Barre, Mountaintop area, and Lackawanna County, Channel 190. My guest today, Joe Maddon, manager of the World Series champion Chicago Cubs, and the honorary chair of the Hazleton 1 Community Center. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And Bob Curry, who is the president. Bob, I mentioned before we went to break, if we could take this Community 1, this project, and multiply it across the country, it would be phenomenal. What specifically, Joe, do these young people, when they come in, what do they do?
Okay, our mission statement was this. We wanted to provide three things, so it was a three-prong approach. The first thing is an educational component, there's a cultural component, and there's an athletic component. So depending on what time of day you walk into our center, there's just about always an educational component. In the morning, we have 15 children who are in a pre-K program. Now this is a state-licensed pre-K program. It's also bilingual. So if Caucasian kids come in, they learn a little bit of Spanish. If there are kids coming from homes where English isn't spoken, they learn enough English and they're socialized enough that they have a big advance when they get to kindergarten, the more structured program. That was one of our goals. The after-school program, our initial thought was, well, if we could just keep kids off the street, we'd be doing our community a big favor. But once we did that, we started to see that was not the expectation that Joe has or that we developed pretty quickly. We can do more. These kids are brilliant kids. They're all bilingual. They're all from families that are very involved in their education. And we knew that we had an opportunity to go beyond. So what we do is we do enrichment programming with them. It is a science-based education. The curriculum was developed in conjunction with Penn State University, the main campus, who is one of our main partners. And then after that, we've still got the athletic component. Every single day there's something. Some of our partnerships, 3 days a week, PAL, the Police Athletic League, basketball is in there. We have Little League Baseball in there. Once the spring comes, because they need indoor facilities as well. So depending what time of day, we've got basically kids all through the day. And then additionally, we have things for parents. We have English classes for Spanish speakers. We have Spanish classes for English speakers, which we found to be surprisingly successful. But it's supported by many, many of the businesses in the area who say, we got to get our managers up to snuff with Spanish, so they take those courses.
So Joe, I look at you, Joe Maddon, I look at you as the major spotlight, okay? So what happens when Joe Maddon comes into Hazleton, and you're no stranger to the area. I know you'd like to hear more, but you got a lot of things happening. But the mere fact is, when you come in, you bring this spotlight, and then the people are more aware of what's happening, such as we're doing this show, and you got a lot of activities happening this week when you're in Hazleton. That in itself is I think a tribute to you, Joe, and your family, okay? Because you're bringing that attention to them, but you're bringing good attention. How do you see the future here, Joe, with this organization? And I mentioned before how this can expand, because Bob has national people coming in, which people don't know. He has national television stations coming in, talking about what you're doing. How do you see the future, Joe?
It's going to keep expanding, like Bob had been speaking about. When we started this out, the original concept was to nail it here in Hazleton, to get it down, to build all the programs that Bob's talked about right now. And after we got it down right here, then hopefully start helping the hinterlands, outer communities outside of Hazleton, whether it's up in the Wilkes-Barre area, I don't just in the outlying areas, to try to help these particular areas or boroughs, whatever, communities to establish and create the same kind of programs. And then from there, keep working out until it becomes the national model that we thought it can be in the beginning. But when you're affiliated with Penn State, and is Temple still, I mean, all these different universities, all these different universities that are involved, you're already expanding on the level that you would like to. So for me, the sky's the limit. I'd never put limitations on, obviously, what I've ever done, and I don't want us to put limitations on what we can possibly do. You must aim high. When you're going to start, whatever the business is, or whatever the community project is, you have to aim high. Again, I read something years ago, I think it was Michelangelo, or could have been Da Vinci, talking about if you don't aim high enough, the threat is that you may hit your mark, and you're never going to really achieve the greatness that you're capable of doing. So again, I'm talking about fearlessness and courage in our community. Put it out there. Make that mark really. Let's become the national symbol for how to do this properly. Why couldn't we? We have a leg up already. We're doing it as good as anybody else, or probably better. So let's continue along this method, and eventually everybody's going to start coming here to find out, okay, exactly what are you doing there at the Hazleton One Community Center?
So, okay, we have, my show has about 100,000 people watching from Pine Grove all the way to the New York border. What do you tell these viewers, okay? How do they become involved in a good thing, for what we're doing for the community? Because it helps all communities. Starts
with a thought. I mean, you always have to start with a thought, and then you have to make a commitment, and you have to know you're going to be placed up against opposition regarding that group that just does not believe in what you want to do. But then after the thought, after you create this group, you have to get together and you have to come up with a common philosophy and a thought and build this culture. Again, how do you do that? I've talked about this before. I'm a pretty simple guy. You got to start building relationships, man. And once you start building relationships within a community, then you can start trusting each other. A big part of why these things don't work anywhere else is because nobody trusts each other anymore. And that was a big part of why Hazleton was so good back in the day. But it goes from relationships to trust, and then you can have an open dialogue, and that's when really good things begin to happen.
And let me jump in because there's one other thing that really is critical for all of this to happen. Once you have those relationships and you've built the trust, you've got to have a group of people together who are willing to jump.
We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Joe Maddon is here, manager of the World Series champion Chicago Cubs, and Bob Curry, who is the president of the HIP program here in Hazleton. Joe, you talk about when you saw this development and you saw Hazleton and what it needed, you had to build a team.
Of course.
Now, speaking of team, we know what you've already built with the Chicago Cubs, which is phenomenal. But talking about the team that you have here in Hazleton and as how it's expanded.
Well, it's spearheaded Bob and my cousin Elaine. He always pushes these platitudes in my direction. Believe me, I don't deserve any of that. Maybe the original concept, talking through the original concept, and trying to provide some encouragement when I come into town. But these guys are there every day. Boots on the ground matters all the time. The people that are there all the time, that's the group that really are the heroes of the situation. Bob, Elaine, and the entire group at the community center on a daily basis, the volunteers. Volunteerism to me is like truly a remarkable concept.
Amazing.
And the people that do that never get any credit. You don't even know who they are. Those are the people, go shake their hands. Those are the ones that really deserve the credit. So we built this situation. Bob and Elaine spearhead it. You walk, and again, he said it earlier, please come in our building and meet the kids, because they're the reflection of all the people that have been working with them to this point. They're remarkable. I listen to the conversation, listen to them speak English, and how they interact, and the way they dress, and the way they look you in the eye. Yeah. It's all a product of being in that building. So these are the guys that make it work. I'm just a smidgen of the success regarding the Hazleton One Community Center, but very proud of that micro part that I do participate in. But these are the guys that get it done daily.
And now, when you come in town, there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of fundraising. Okay, Bob, you're still involved with the fundraising part of
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the first thing I want to bring up is we're celebrating shortly a groundbreaking ceremony, a gift by Bill Rinaldi from Hazleton Creek Properties.
Oh, great guy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
He is tearing up the old parking lot, grading it, and putting in a new playground for our kids. I can't tell you how important that is.
It's
what
phenomenal.
our idea is, right from the start, is allow these kids who by accidents of birth might not have the economic status, give them that level playing field. Give them the same opportunities. Now it's up to them to take it, and we make that clear every single day. But how about this guy? He comes in, he says, what do you need? And 6 months later, we're breaking ground for a playground, which is going to be an MLB-themed playground as well.
Bill is like Joe Maddon, myself. I mean, not to put myself in your same category, but the point is we have ambition. But Bill Rinaldi, with his organization, has always been there for no matter who it was. And I mean, he just that whole organization, his company is just first class. And this is what you attract, Joe. You know, they come in and they see what's happening, but you're able to open doors. I know you say you're a part of it, but the most important thing is you're able to open doors. Now, where you sit as the World Series champion Chicago Cubs manager, I think you could bring a lot of exposure to this area and tell it the way it is. Of course,
Yeah.
I have to hold you back a little bit because you're a very bashful kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be able to do that. I don't mind that particular kind of spotlight because that is something that's going to help bring our area back to the prominence that it once enjoyed. And I do. I attempt to put Hazleton out there as often as I possibly can. I talk a lot about Lafayette College, where I went to school down in Easton. But it's really important where you came from and who actually did do the raising with you. So I want people to know that. I want people to know about our area. I want them to know it was the best place ever to grow up as a kid. And eventually, in the very near future, people are going to say the same thing about it again.
All right. Now, I know we had I wanted to expand the door when you came in because you have from your. They tell me 5 million people, okay, in Chicago, screaming and yelling and just doing a great thing for your team, Chicago Cubs. How did that feel?
It's phenomenal. It's hard to describe. I mean, in fact, if it wasn't $5 million, it was $4 million. I don't know. It's just you drive.
I don't care if it's $1 million.
Yeah, you come out of the parking lot on the bus around the back of Wrigley there on Waveland, and you make the left on Addison, and you go over to the lakeshore and down to downtown. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew we were having a parade. Okay, parades are cool. Right. But I didn't know. I mean, I remember the last parade. I think was Little League opening day in a convertible going up the hill there to Coryell Stadium. But even the perpendicular streets, the people were like lined up so far back. It's incredible. Then you get to Grant Park and you get on stage, and I compared it to Woodstock. I thought it was Richie Havens. You go out there, it was like, I called it Cubstock 2016. The horizon was people. The horizon was actually humans. So our fans are phenomenal. The way they turned out, phenomenal. 108 years is a pretty long stretch. But yeah, our fans, and again, I've often talked about Hazleton to being a microcosm of Chicago. I go to Chicago, very familiar with these folks. I mean, conversations on the streets are very easy. A lot of Italians, a lot of Polish, a lot of Irish, whatever. And we've gotten along really well. But 5 million folks, one day, driving down the street in a bus. I'll never forget that.
It must have been amazing. Well, I wish you the huge success next year with the Cubs. And if you need my help, just give me a call. I'll be more than happy to. Give me the fish oils. Bob, once again, thanks for coming on the show. And you know, anything that Week SSP TV could do to get the good word out and to promote, we're here for you, okay?
Very good. Just want to mention we have a fundraiser at Valley Country Club. That event is sold out, but Joe Maddon Day is on Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. and it's being held at the Hazleton One Community Center.
Please show
If
up.
you want to come out and say hi to Joe and congratulate Joe, it's open to the public and it's free.
See our building and meet our kids.
That's right, and Joe will say hi, I guarantee it. Joe Maddon, folks, is the manager of the World Series champion Chicago Cubs. It's always a pleasure to have him on the Sam Lesante Show, and my good friend Bob Curry doing a great job with HIP program. Get involved, folks. Go and see it for yourself. You'll know what we're talking about. You'll see you next time.